Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of How to Build a Game Studio. I am back again, I'm Trevor, and this week we have Moudy, our artist, on the podcast, and me and him are going to talk about the creation of the logo and the different ideas and everything that we came across while trying to think of what we want out of the logo, and the process in which we went through to actually get the final logo. I think it's actually a really interesting talk. We're going to have some visual aids on the website, so if you look at the podcast episode on winterborngames.com, there are actually photos that you can go through of our process and our step-by-step elimination of certain logos, and you can look at those while you see why Moudy, me, and the rest of the team made those decisions as we talk it out on the podcast. It's a little bit shorter than last week, but it's I think it's a talk worth listening to. And I want to also, before we get into it, thank everybody that's listened to episode 1. The response has been really great, and we appreciate you listening. And if you have a chance, go on iTunes and rate, review us. I know every podcast says that, but it does genuinely help. I'm not sure if there's a rate and review system on Spotify and Google Play, but if you happen to listen to us there, we appreciate you too. And if you have the chance to rate us, we would absolutely love to see that. And we would really appreciate it. And we'll, if you happen to review us, we will do our best to try to read those reviews on the podcast in later episodes. And thank you guys so much for listening. But yeah, let's get into the conversation with me and Moudy. All right, everybody, I'm here with Moudy, our artist. How's it going, Moudy?
Hey everybody, it's Moudy, and yeah, I am the artist at Winterborn. I'm happy to be here and talk to everybody.
You should be. Everybody's happy to have you talking to them, I think. I hope.
I hope so. I'm going to try to be as interesting and at least, well, if not interesting, at least try to give some valuable information or something that'll be useful for everybody.
Well, I think we'll have a lot of useful information today. We're going to kind of go over the process of how we got to our logo. And actually on our website, I'm going to put a companion piece, a blog post that'll go along with it, so that they can visualize kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. Because I feel that, especially like when we were talking about internally, that was a really key point to just a lot of the visuals, because you can, talk all you want about it, but I feel like we got to figure it out like aesthetically too.
Yeah, exactly, and that's it's an important thing. You wouldn't think going into a new studio that, like, top of your list, one of the important things would be your actual logo, but really your logo is going to represent your identity to everybody else out there. But not only that, this is something that I didn't know going into it, is that you kind of need a logo when you're filing for a trademark. So if we wanted to trademark our studio, we actually required a logo to throw along with our patent. So that is kind of some inside baseball there for everybody.
That was really cool. I had no idea myself. That it's nice to think that there's like almost an artisan requirement of every company. There has to be this visual aspect to it, which, it does make sense in hindsight, but it's cool that it's required.
Yeah, it definitely shows your identity, so that they know what company this is, that sort of thing. So that way it can separate you from everybody else out there putting a patent in for different company names and stuff. But anyway, let's get to the logo here. So you kind of went in with a couple ideas. We kind of threw a few like small ideas at you. We were thinking role playing games, and Boo came up. Boo, our music creator, sound guy. Whatever he wants to be called.
Yeah.
Boo, our audio engineer, he came up with basically he was looking around at images on the internet, saw basically a logo with a D20 on it, because our studio is based after a tabletop game that Kent did years ago, that many of us played, so it makes sense to kind of put our tabletop roots in there. So we had that. We had the name Winterborn, so we kind of had the winter idea, and I made like a mock-up shield thing to kind of coincide with that. So what were you thinking initially, Moudy?
I mean, the name itself was very strong. The fact that it was called Winterborn, and what's actually really interesting is it I remember when I first started trying to make something, I didn't immediately ask Kent and you guys what exactly the name meant. So it was kind of funny, like I wanted to go in blind, just sort of like, what's my gut instinct telling me? But so the first thing, since obviously we knew we were going to do games, was I went for a lot of things that were symbols of, unity, togetherness, anything that meant like, uh, kind of coming together, and anything that could also imply some sort of adventure in it. So I'm sure once you show the pictures, everyone will see that I went from things like, swords, flags, and then obviously had to touch on the fact that it was called Winterborn, so it definitely played up the whole winter aspect. But those were just a few of the, preliminary things I was trying to go for, like, or I had in my mind.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, and now looking back at some of the stuff you had, you had essentially a flag idea that was the state of Ohio, um,
Yeah.
as one of those, because I mean obviously the rest of us are all from Ohio,
Hmm.
from Wintersville, which goes into the name of the studio, so I mean it makes sense from there,
Yeah, and
'cause
I've
that's kind of
actually
where the rest of us will get our identity.
I also thought that the state just actually also, if you guys just go ahead and search up the state, like how it actually looks, it really actually fits pretty well for if you want to draw essentially a flag that was sort of like breezing in the wind. It had a good shape for it. So I was like,
Yeah.
why not, you know?
But yeah, you went from that. You went to different dice type things.
Yeah.
You went with like you said swords and you even had like the person hold the flag, kind of almost like Iwo Jima esque stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, because to me, and mind you guys, like this was again literally in the beginning, so a lot of things were being learned about the company, about who we were exactly, and I guess for me, one of the things that I was searching for as an artist and as an individual in the company was we were definitely trying to figure out. I mean, when we say we're trying to make a logo, I'm like, what are we trying to say? We're trying to say that. And I remember we even said this. We want something that we can all put on a shirt, on our back, on our front, and be proud of it. So the idea of the Iwo Jima statue was one of those things that immediately resonated to me because if you guys haven't seen that, just definitely give it a Google search because it's a very powerful image of a statue of all these men just raising the American flag. And this idea of, I'm going to probably say this way too much, but like oneness, just this idea that this is what defines us. So I was really attracted to those kind of symbolic metaphors and, the visual stuff.
So yeah, I mean symbolism was a big part of this.
Mhm.
And you even went to like the idea with the entity holding the ball of light, was
Yeah.
another idea.
It was, I think if I remember right, the initial idea I had was, and mind you guys, I'm gonna be a little artsy fartsy here, all right? So, but like, it was the idea of trying to contrast the winter. So one of the things I immediately thought about was obviously warmth, and the idea of that combination, and the idea of even like the portrayal of, let's say, the soul can be a warming idea. So there was this idea of creating this either maybe it could have been a human, maybe it could have been some sort of like iconic figure that maybe would have became something of a look to us, holding this ball of energy, being the idea of literally as the term as the name means being winterborn, something that came to existence via through the winter, literally. I think I even did after that was the one where I drew the hand and this idea of I think it was blood or something, just to kind of signify humanity in the palm of someone's hand. Like they say, lifeblood, like essentially.
Hmm. Yeah, it makes sense, and especially since we were at least in our heads we were birthing something new,
Yeah.
making a new company. We wanted some sort of symbolism there, but in a way, I think we almost thought like too much about it, at least at the beginning, because
Which
I think
which
we all thought real hard about it.
I mean, which honestly, to me, is a good sign in the end because sometimes, honestly, it means that we care, and it's good to kind of go through that. If we can call it like the honeymoon phase, and we took it way too seriously, I mean, that's what we did, and I mean, not way seriously, like, but we went all the way to the edge just to see if that was where we wanted to go, and we're like, all right, that's just a cliff, so we're like, all right, heading back now. But I mean, I even remember like you guys were saying with the dice, we were like really into the idea, but I think ultimately we decided not to do it just because we thought that it actually might ultimately be more misleading than showing where we come from, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because we were thinking that, I mean, yeah, we're looking at role playing games and we're making a tactical RPG, but at the same time, it's not going to be entirely like a tabletop game.
Right.
So we didn't want to give that immediate impression that it's going to be exactly like that.
Yeah.
And I also in a certain way, I don't think we wanted to be um, put into that box of
Hmm.
like, yeah, now all our games have to be pretty much like centered around this tabletop idea where, if we can have a successful game and we can go on to make another one, that we're forced into kind of having that logo and just working on stuff based on a tabletop game.
Right. And honestly, yeah, and with that, I even remember we ultimately even said that it was like to the people who hopefully when our game's out, like it would be a disservice to sort of make our symbolism be so heavily implying that it was this when you might not that would be what you expect, and then all of a sudden that's not what you get. We want you to understand it's our roots, but not what you're necessarily going to be playing. It's almost like you hear a lot of people who are inspired by anime, but it's not necessarily what you're going to be playing. So if they start to turn
Right.
every logo to like anime eyes, and you're like, oh right, it's an anime thing. You get in there and you're like, bro, this is not even anime. Like it's disappointing too. So we want to set people's idea of what they're going to be getting.
Yeah, we wanted to set the right expectations. We went while also like coming up with something cool that we can put on a T-shirt.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Which this is gonna sound kind of ironic, I guess. So in a way, I feel like ultimately we did land on a logo that we all kind of unanimously like, but funny enough, it's actually the most, I want to say, and this is in a good way, but the most simplest one I think from all of them.
Oh yeah.
So there goes expectations, right?
Yeah, because I mean, you even, I mean, the one of the ones we didn't talk about was you have like an elk, like a mystical elk, and almost like one that's like a demon skull and stuff too.
Mhm.
That were other ideas. I mean, obviously the elk makes a bit more sense because of the winter
Right.
theme, and a mystical elk and stuff kind of goes along with that, especially since we're working on fantasy
Yeah.
type games. So I mean, that makes sense. But ultimately, I think the simplistic was the one that everybody kind of was drawn to.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, in my personal take, because I'd actually like to hear yours, Trevor, because mine was in the end that it really did signify that I think that we could give enough information in this logo to tell like what we were sort of like in a way, but it was also for me a way of being like, let's see what really is beyond this kind of thing. I think it left enough to be like, what is this,
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think for me, that was kind of the one where I went to, but that's because like I'm very much like someone that since I do social media and stuff, I look at design and I'm like, what looks clean and clear, and so like what are people gonna like see as a logo, and then you had examples in there of people that had logos with and without text.
Right. Yes.
And I was just like, well, what if we could have something that did both of those? Because that's something you mentioned too. And I thought that was for the best.
Yeah.
Because in a way we could have a little bit of both, which makes it unique, but also just very nice and neat, and something we could put on literally anything.
No, right. And I thank you actually for reminding me, because yeah, one of the examples that we were talking about when we were discussing our logo was that, have you guys ever been to like an event? You can call it could be any sort of video game event where you meet a bunch of indie game developers or anything like that, and you remember the shirt that they were wearing, and it had this like wicked cool like logo on it, but it just didn't happen to have like anything written on it. You'd end up like the next day or that night being like, what was that game or what was that company called? And it'd actually kind of be like really frustrating because it was something really cool, but there just wasn't a name. So yeah, like you said, we kind of came to the fact that one of the rules that we decided was that the logo had to have our name, so that in the situation just like that, or even if someone is not even a gamer necessarily, but knows a gamer, they can essentially read it and remember it and be able to like spread the word, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, so for instance, if you were looking at say the Rockstar logo.
Right.
Obviously, if you're a gamer, you know what the Rockstar logo is.
Mm-hmm.
You know who Rockstar are. They made huge games that everybody plays. People are still buying Grand Theft Auto 5, even though it's been out for like 6 years now. It's still on like the top 10 sales list. It's kind of insane. But yeah, you know what Rockstar's logo is. However, if Rockstar was this new indie company just coming out, and you just looked at the logo, which is an R with a star underneath, you would have no idea.
Right.
Who Rockstar is, and you'd be like, "What was that? An R star? I don't."
Yeah.
Know.
I think even
Absolutely.
we had a really good example, which was the one of imagine if you gave someone the Half-Life logo without the word
Yeah.
Half-Life in it, and the game would be essentially is you tell that person to go on the phone and explain that to somebody else over the phone without the name. Just describe that logo to somebody. And I know it's actually a real logo, like it actually has a, I can't tell if it's a sign, it's a mathematical symbol, but
Mm.
without that, try
But I mean, the
describing. It would be really hard.
and the average person isn't going to know that mathematics symbol, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, to us, it looks like an upside down Y essentially.
Oh yeah, I didn't even see it that way. Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of just looks like an upside down Y. So I mean, you could describe it that way,
Right.
but it still doesn't tell you like anything about the game.
Yeah, but so yeah, that was definitely one of the rules we had, and the other ones I think I remember were sort of just ones we decided that we were going to choose, and I think we even used think of a company like Sega, which was using a sort of stylized font that. At hindsight, again, if you had no idea what Sega was, the least thing you could go is you could say the name, and there was something about it that has an appealing touch. It has a personality per se. The blue, and even the font itself has a like a '90s vibe to it. But in a way now, like it's like one of those things. Like once you kind of see it, it's kind of really hard to forget. So that was one of the other roles that we're hoping to sort of establish something that could make us stand out in that sense, which I believe was in the end where we decided to focus on having the name, and then the O would be the winter theme in it.
Yeah, which yeah, it'd be some sort of like snowflake kind
Yeah.
of, you know, logo stylized.
I just discovered snowflake means something now, but no, we mean like just a normal snowflake.
Yeah, I mean it's 2019.
Yeah, I mean
What
I'm
can you
not.
say about that?
I didn't mean to bring. I literally just learned about this a month ago. I was like, really?
That's funny. Yeah, yeah. I mean, but you know, our company's called Winterborn, so obviously we want to lean into winter somewhere here.
Definitely.
So and obviously we can't, you know, go crazy. So we were thinking something simple like a snowflake would be perfect, because if you see a snowflake, you automatically understand winter and cold and ice and snow and, you know, anything that goes along with it.
Right. Yeah, and I think, like you said, it does say it really well, because I truly believe there was like it's a phrase I'm not going to remember now, but it's one of those things where it's not literal, but they say that an image can evoke so many words out of your thoughts. And that's one of those, I think, symbols that's really strong, and essentially with the name it really double downs on what we're going for in the theme.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So to go along with, so we kind of knew what we wanted at that point. We wanted essentially something simple, but also something to call our own, which is what we threw in the O. So when you're looking for like a font, a font choice, which is kind of a weird thing to talk about on a podcast. I never thought I'd be talking about fonts on a podcast, but but when you are, because you're the one doing this, being the artist, when you're actually looking for fonts, like what are you looking for?
I mean, to be honest, like I'll come clear and say that I wouldn't consider myself exactly a graphic designer, which is primarily someone who is a graphic designer is usually someone who does logos and really knows their fonts and the history behind symbolism and how fonts work. But again, I was trying to go for something that was in a way could stand on its own. And it's not to say that not like technically any font could stand on its own, but something that helped us sort of stand in our in that path that we were going for. And I felt that as we were going through, I went through like essentially the super intense logo, like I mean not logo, but like fonts that were like almost like graffiti-esque, to things that look very classical, or something that would even invoke highbrow, lowbrow feelings. And eventually, the one that we landed on, which oh my god, dude, I can't remember the name of the font now, but
it's Progress.
it's Progress, because I would love to give the guy a shout out. So if you ever
it's from a guy named K Red.
And I believe it's on the website, which if you guys are looking for fonts, I'm sure you're aware of. It's called thefont.com. And this guy, bless his heart, because this font is absolutely free and there is no strings attached. He made it, and he's like, have at it. So, we are, truly blessed to have that. And when we went for the font, it has enough personality to it, but in a way it's sort of like almost like a bold font. But I think we even played with the idea of like, what if we don't capitalize anything? So it's just literally like almost like this very I don't know. It's not necessarily saying it's proper. It's not necessarily trying to say anything. It just literally is translating the word like a who we are. That's what I found when I was really like focusing on it.
Yeah, and for someone like me that just wanted something like that was nice and clean, that's readable.
Yeah.
People being able to read it and understand it is probably the main thing.
Yeah, I mean that's I'm sure that's like the most important part. Yeah, so we gotta make sure that everybody can read it. But I think also hopefully my goal with it was it's not to say that logos can come off that way, but like for example, like it wouldn't necessarily be threatening, wouldn't necessarily be like I didn't want these words to I didn't want necessarily to evoke a specific strong emotion, but I wanted it to be something that is, and not to play to the idea of just the simple symbol of winter and the snowflake, but the idea of just if a snowflake falls, it simply just comes down, and it's really it is what it is kind of thing. I really like the idea of it just simply existing.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So we decided on font. We know what we want to do font wise. So now we had to actually look at the important part of it, the most important part of it, and that's the actual snowflake itself.
Oh my god, yeah.
So like, I mean, that was a little bit of a ride there.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like I've literally drawn hundreds of snowflakes, dude. I've lost count. And then not only from there, you start to reiterate, and then you start to like create all these things, and before you know it, you're sort of like creating your own little like language with snowflakes. I'm like, what happens if I make the snowflake more rounder or more sharper? Does it need crystals around it? Does it need like these shapes, dude? Dude, graphic design. I mean, logo designing. It's something, man. What do you think of like the looks first? What were you feeling for it?
So initially, like the different approaches that you came at us with were one that was just like almost a normal snowflake with some crystals shooting out of it. There was one that had kind of, it was like a half snowflake that almost had like a K shape, but then had some wintry elements in the center there, some ice crackling sort of thing, and then you had like another that basically had some like filigree and stuff around it. I was initially feeling the half snowflake that looks more like a K. That was where I initially wanted to go.
I think I was in the same boat. I was really feeling like I'm like that's going to be it, man. That's going to be the one. I thought it was kind of cool how it almost felt like. Oh, I was hoping, at least I hope it does. It felt like you could imply the whole snowflake without even having to show all of it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where I thought it was going too. I think me, you, and Kent were on a phone call, because this was before you came in to where we actually did our initial studio meetings and stuff in person. So it was literally like me and Kent sitting in his parents' basement, looking at these logos on like essentially a conference call with you. Looking at these, I think we all went for number 2. On what we have to show here, and it was the half logo, the half snowflake essentially.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to remember. Do you remember what it was that ultimately brought us back to actually putting a full, like the full as opposed to the half? Because I'm not sure.
I do remember. It was because we showed other people outside of the company.
Oh, and what was it that they said? Is it because
it looked like a K?
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, they said it looked too much like a K, and they weren't sure exactly what. Like, it basically made it look like Winterborn.
Yeah, so the indie company Winterborn.
Yeah, like so, like which I mean, I can get that. Like I understood where they were coming from. I mean, that's essentially what happened. We showed we showed friends and family that literally off our phones, like, hey, what do you think? And pretty much most of them were like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, but I mean, like sometimes, like you said, that's the best way, especially in art. In my experience, is that you need that. Essentially, it's like I guess sometimes, I mean, not sometimes, it's quite often that you can find yourself in a capsule and you sort of and you create your own logic, so to speak. So sometimes you just need the reality to come in and like the realness, and family can be really good with that. Or even friends, they'll just be like you just said, just straight up like, that's a K. I'm like, oh, no, it's a snowflake, man. Don't you get it? No, it's a K. I'm like, oh, crap.
Yeah, but
it's
then
like,
it's like,
he's like, yeah.
but we're like in this bubble where we see a lot of video game stuff. We see a lot of video game logos. We see that stuff, and we're like, that's a cool looking logo. Like naughty, and we understand. Like we
Right.
understand exactly what that is. But when I show my 60-some-year-old mother a logo, and she's like, I don't know what that is. Like I'm just like, but no, it's like a cool half snowflake. Don't you get it? And that's she's just like, no, I like the one that has a full snowflake in it.
And I mean, I think what I think is I'm glad that we actually end up sticking with that, because essentially, had we chose to be like no to the people we knew, we're like, you guys don't get it, and we kind of stuck to it, we would have actually broken the rule that we were trying to establish in the beginning, which was that ideally we wanted to make a logo that was immediately readable, that people could essentially pass the word on. And had we ignored those people, we would have ignored the fact that it wasn't readable, and also that someone who technically wasn't a gamer wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
So it's actually good that we end up being like, all right, I guess, as much as we love the idea, we got to make this essentially work for someone who is, not a gamer as well, or anybody. So I'm glad that now we're talking about. I kind of look back at that K. See, I'm calling it a K now, but I'm like, oh, I do miss it. But I think we made the right move.
I mean, I really like that design. I think you did great with that design. But it's one of those things where it's like, I think we made a smarter decision because we listened to the people around us.
Yeah.
Instead of just been stubborn and been like, this is our logo, we're doing it. I just don't think that would have worked out.
Right. Yeah.
Well, for us, I think it's better to sometimes listen to people outside of your immediate bubble.
I feel like, that's, those are facts, man. I feel like when I think about it in hindsight, there's so many things, like, I'm sure everyone has that in their life where it could be, work-wise or even just life. Someone told you what to do, but, you're like, I should have listened to that person. So I'm glad this time we did. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think everybody goes through that, especially whenever, like, probably more your teenage years, where you're just stubborn about everything. And it's like, nah, man, I know what I'm doing. You can't tell me what to do, or even if you're, in your early 20s and just headstrong and like, I want to do something different. I want to be different. I want to be an artist. This is my art. You don't understand.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
But it's different when you're making a company and something that you want to actually have out there and have people recognize. So yeah, I think you're right. I think we did make the right decision ultimately by making a decision that we didn't want to make.
Right. And I feel like I'm going to sound like a rule book, but again, I feel that sometimes, like you said, in the heat of the moment or whatever, you can almost go very emotional. But
yeah,
like the first rules, like we said, it was readable and people beyond games could like recognize it or understand it. The other one I think that's also really important is that, like, sort of what we were talking about in the beginning is that ideally, if things work out, we're trying to do something that is a community thing. Like, video games is a community endeavor. Like, we need the community to like it or care about it. So I think that, again, inadvertently, we were actually, hopefully, again, we're sticking to the rules that we believe in. And I'm glad to see that, it may not be something like comes off from the logo itself, but I'm happy to know that within our company that we were able to establish or work with those rules that we, it's about sticking to them, So the logo literally is defined by the fact that we looked towards our community to get a response, and once they spoke, we as opposed to being like you said, I'm an artist or whatever. Yeah. I'm actually happy to know that we were able to take that into consideration. So that's part of it,
Yeah, absolutely. And now we can look at the final logo. And I really like what you did.
Hey, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. I feel like I told just so everyone can hear, I told those guys again, I really, making the logo was not exactly, I would say, easy because of the pressure, but the thing that also drove me was like, I definitely want to, like, if you guys trust me, I definitely want to do my best to represent you guys visually somehow. If this is gonna be us and a logo that hopefully, like, people can look to as, for what we do, I want it to definitely, shine in its best light possible. And in a weird way, the ending, it felt like it was a roller coaster to get there, but funny enough, when the results are all there, it kind of seems simple, but there are so many steps, but in the end, it really was coming down to turning the O into just a very defined, hopefully we believe it's a defined snowflake, that you can see and be like, that's Winterborn right there,
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because you would think that something like the logo wouldn't be such a process, such a big deal, when really it's a much bigger deal, and there's much more involved than you would have thought.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember for us, one of the harder things was, again, it's funny in hindsight when you kind of look at it now. I'm like, yeah, so our logo can, we have multiple versions of the logo, but coming up with the blue or the black and white, it's kind of like, well, yeah, obviously you're going to have like a black version of the font and stuff, but like, it's one of those things like, when you realize that it's going to be something that in the long run represents you, you sit there and you just stare at it. And you're like, is this right? And it's just like, it's almost like, I imagine, you're like, you're trying essentially think about all the possibilities of what this thing could mean,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ultimately you're trying to make a decision that you don't want to regret 6 months down the line.
Yeah, pretty much.
And be like, hey, we're out in the world now. Why did we do that? We are so stupid.
Yeah, why does the Winterborn have a K in it? Winterborn.
And now they just call us Winter Broken or something.
Yeah, dude.
And that's how internet memes start, people.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to be the next internet meme, although we
right?
Probably will be at some point during our journey.
Yeah, I just imagine a picture of like Winterborn in the winter, it's our logo, then Winterborn in the summer, it's just like a puddle. But anyways, it's just the first thing that came into my mind.
Absolutely. Well, hey guys, I think that's us talking about the logo there. So I want to thank you, Moudy, for being on the episode here.
Thank you, and thank you, Trevor, for having me.
Yeah, I think we had a good time explaining the logo here, and I know we'll talk to you in the future as we get more stuff out there of all the great, fantastic art that you're working on. If people wanted to see some of the art that you've done before, I know they can follow you on Instagram. What's your Instagram, Moudy?
Oh wait, hold on. I totally forgot about this part. It's wait, just a moment. It's you can follow me at Moudy. Is it underscore? Is that the bomb arrow, the bomb line?
Yes. Yeah, it's an underscore.
Sorry, so it's Moudy underscore Hamo, which is MOUDY underscore HAMO.
I'll also put that in the description of the episode. That way people can just click on it from their podcast app, whichever one they may use.
No, thank you. And also, I know we just started out, and hopefully, we'll get to soon show you guys some more stuff. But if anyone's down to, DM me or just talk about art or anything, dude, I'm always down. I hope that, apart from we making a great game for everybody, we're, hopefully going to create a great community. So if anyone wants to talk art or anything, just, hit me up.
Absolutely. That's definitely our goal here, is to create something that we want to share with all of you. So feel free to reach out to Moudy. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Trevor Oz, TrevorOSZ. If you have any questions for us, just let us know. And if you have any questions for the podcast, feel free to let us know. And you can email social media at Winterborn Games and just put podcast question as the question in the subject line, and we'll probably read it on the air at some point, and we'll answer for you. But anyway, Moudy, again, thank you for coming on.
Thanks
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, dude. And I guess I'll looking forward to the next episode.
Me too.
All right, dude.